Mark, good afternoon. I would start by providing my opening remarks and also by saying that I will be stay only for a few time because I have to follow the senior management team meeting that is happening now with our executive secretary. So
Yes, I'm supposed to be there too.
yeah, but I have to be there later. So let me just kick off. Let me thank everyone that is in this meeting, and a special greetings to all the ESBN Roundtable members on this project. You know, and I think it's a common knowledge that the 2015 Paris Agreement, it brought together all nations of the world in a commitment to limit the global temperature to hopefully below 1.5 degree and in no way above 200 degrees level. And to achieve this, we need a significant reduction of CO2 emissions. And I must say that if we see where the world is standing right now with the so-called nationally determined contribution, we are nowhere on achieving the goals of the Paris Agreement. These goals, they have two big milestones. One is that by 2030, so in 9 years from now, we need to reduce CO2 emissions by 45%. And then by on 2050, we need to have a net zero carbon global economy. So the Asia Pacific, because of its size, because of its increasing emission, is said to play a very key role in implementing these goals. And the region contributes more than 50% of the world's total greenhouse gas emissions. And I have to tell you that the recent assessment we have done on where the countries in Asia Pacific stand regarding their nationally determined contributions, we see that they are nowhere on achieving the 1.5 or even the 2 degrees Celsius. If the countries in Asia Pacific will continue with this way, and if all the countries in the world they will have the same pattern, we will go even above 4 degrees Celsius. So there's a very big need for raising the ambition of the NTCs. We need to look at every possible means we have. And I must say that some discussion these days about new technologies like the carbon capture and storage, the carbon capture and utilization, what some experts they call geoengineering, although it was not mainstreamed 10 years ago, now it's part of the big discussion because we are desperate for measures. And anything that could work, it needs to have a chance. So adoption of strategies on reducing and utilizing CO2 could be a solution, a part of the solution. Not the only solution, because really the solution is to stop emitting. So it's not to just try to capture. We need to see at the CO2 emissions as a wasteful outcome of the production. So it's the same as the plastic. So yes, it is a good measure to collect the plastics and try to recycle them and try to use them, but the best is to stop using plastic. So it's the same with the CO2 emissions. Good if we can capture them, if we can reuse it, if we can make them part of a circular economy, but ultimately we need to stop emitting. Until we have the technologies and the finance to stop emitting, part of the carbon capture and utilization is part of the solution. So reducing the CO2 emissions with this technique will really require the private sector and especially large-scale industries to reduce their footprints and to be the ones that they are in the forefront. So the roundtable today will discuss the clear business imperative in reducing these carbon emissions, highlight examples of how these sectors are approaching emissions with reduction activities, as well as balancing the social and economic impact of the transition to zero carbon business to ensure a just transition. And I know that we have colleagues here from ILO that they have worked a lot. Project for cost-effective business. I want to thank you all for joining, and now let me, I don't know if you can still hear me. So
yes,
let me
introduce you were done for a while.
Okay. Okay. So let me introduce the chair of ESCAP ESBN Task Force on Climate and Disaster Reduction, Mr. Asif Ibrahim, to give his opening remarks, and I wish you a good continuation of the meeting. After this, Mark is back to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Stefanos. First of all, I would like to thank ESCAP for collaborating with ESBN to organize this very important meeting. And I would also like to thank the GCCA, CTCN, ILO, and of course the Swedish government for collaborating in this very important discussion. Stefanos, in his opening remarks, has mentioned the importance of the engagement of the private sector, particularly the big industries in the region. Today, we will be highlighting mainly cement and textiles. Particularly in the textile sector, we all know that this region has many big textile units, and out of the global supply chain, majority of the textiles exports actually come from this country. Me being from Bangladesh and also being a director of Bangladesh Ready-Made Garments Manufacturers and Exporters Association, we see the need for addressing and preparing ourselves until the technology is here to take some measures strategically, engage with development partners, engage with agencies who can provide us solutions to go forward in this effort. I would just like to mention, during the session 3, I will discuss in detail, but I would just like to specifically mention a little bit about the task force that we do, that we have in ESBN regarding the climate risk reduction. We also address the issue of DRR, but I'm not going to talk about that now. We basically promote the effective participation of business in climate risk reduction. We try to raise awareness on the role of business in climate change adaptation and promote integration of CCA in business continuity planning to avoid business disruption, as well as we try to identify opportunities for addressing these significant issues, aligning with the Sustainable Development Goals. Now, going back to some of the examples that I was going to talk about, I'll just mention a few ones. So, say, for example, we have a project called Textile Sustainability Platform, which is a joint collaboration with the IFC. And here we promote efficiency for the use of resources and sustainability, environmental sustainability in the country's lucrative textile sector. We have actually been able to identify through another project which is called TREES, towards resource efficiency and environmental sustainability, which is run by the BGME and the association that I represent. And we have partnered with GIZ and we have taken a cluster-based approach to enhance environmental performance in the factories. And this project aims to help factories improve their energy efficiency and environmental compliance. And we have been able to actually quantify the annual energy saving. It is 1,765,527 kWh, annual natural gas saving of 38,300 m, and annual CO2 emission reduced by 799 tons. So what I'm saying is that when the private sector engages with agencies, the UN agencies, the development partners, and comes up with some concrete solutions and some efforts and some strategies, it can possibly yield positive results. So there are these successful examples that we have in Bangladesh, and I'm sure my colleagues in the cement industry and other industries will also talk about it. What we need to do is scale them up. I hope that after today's discussion, we'll be able to find out more about some of these strategies that particularly these two industries can undertake, and take lessons and then go forward and try to make a difference in future. Thank you very much.
That works. Thank you so much, Asif, for this welcome address. Now we continue with two keynote addresses, and the first person I want to give the floor to is Mr. Sanjeev Baal. He's the CEO of Cytex USA Vietnam. Mr. Baal, are you there?
He's going to, it's a video that Khun Kanda will have to play.
Okay, good. Kanda, can you play the video?
Just 1 second.
Okay. Modern technology in action. It always remains fascinating. In the meantime, it's good to see Albert Ong here. He's the coordinator of the Task Force on Green Economy in ESBN.
Yes.
So we have a very good ESBN presence here today. Hopefully this is an area that one of the task forces will take up after this meeting.
Kanda, if you need more time, we can switch to the other keynotes. Let me know what you think.
I think, Eric, let's go to the keynotes.
Yes.
Without
Yes,
wasting
please.
time.
Okay.
Okay. So Eric, you'll take over here then?
Okay, I'll take over at the first. If everyone can hear me, first of all, I need to know, can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, but there's an echo.
Oh, okay. Sorry for that. So anyways, thank you so much. I'm sorry I'm late to the meeting. I have my own technical glitches here. I'm in a mall. So I'd like to introduce Mr. Mahendra Singhi. He's the CEO of Dalmia Cement, India. If you want to learn more about him, we have all the bios for the opening session at our website to save time. So let me pass the floor to Mr. Mahendra Singhi, please, sir. Thank you so much for joining today. You have the floor.
Dear global sisters and brothers, namaskar. Happy day to all participants of the globe. It's my great honor and pleasure to share my thoughts today on decarbonization of the industry, which is very dear to my heart. I would like to congratulate the United Nations Economic and Social Commission for Asia and the Pacific and other partners organizations such as GCCA, CTCN, and ILO for organizing the Roundtable. ESCAP can play a very important role in decarbonization path by bringing together all government and non-government actors to implement the philosophy of clean and green is profitable and sustainable. Decarbonization is an important tool for circular economy and to fight the climate crisis, and an important theme of the discussion would be how CO2, which is major greenhouse gas, can be transformed into a value-added product. Strategies on reducing CO2 emissions have taken core of business decisions and boardroom strategies. Forward-looking companies having long-term planning and perspective are taking big actions, as well as commitments on deployment of renewable electricity, switching to sustainable biomass fuels, advancing on circular economy practices by way of utilizing waste materials, energy efficiency, electric mobility, and last but not the least, carbon capture and utilization. Everybody would acknowledge that strategies on reducing and utilizing CO2 for the cost-effective business is a critical discussion topic for the industry. I come from cement sector, and where 55% of the GHG emission can only be avoided by carbon capture and utilization, and therefore you may imagine my interest and my company's interest and GCCA's interest in this subject area. I'll start with my message with a few lines written poetically on CCU. The attempt is to develop powerful yet simple messaging on complex solutions such as CCU. Hopefully, it would set the tone for further discussions in this important roundtable. Friends, technologies, policies, finance, and innovations are tools in our range. Let us better use them for CCU to reverse the climate change. Say goodbye to those lessons stating CCU is a fiction because it brings circularity and an emerging big solution. CO2 is an essential compound made of carbon and oxygen. Let us reclaim CCU reclaim what climate change has taken, but never forget the renewable electricity and hydrogen. Both are critical for the commercials to broaden. The range of CCU products is evolving everywhere. Soon, people would realize that they wasted CO2 in thin air. Consumers will start demanding green products as waking up king. Let us meet the upcoming wishes of the sovereign. Urea, green concrete, dyeing textiles, carbon rods, minerals, synthetic fuels, and proteins are part of CCU products variety. Friends, let us create a CCU mall to offer value-added green products to the society. Availability of green finance, tax policies, and green grants are crucial. Let us purpose them to make CCU demonstration projects viable. Industry has a great record of providing products and employment. Making it carbon-free to serve the world would be a noble enjoyment. UN government, institutions, investors, philanthropists, come along. Carbon capture inflation come along and kickstart CCU upscaling and put carbon to where it rightly belongs. Carbon capture and inflation is abbreviated as CCU. We need it as the climate crisis may otherwise take planet towards ICU. CCU is vaccine to climate crisis and key to net zero essence. Join me, friends. Join me to create the momentum and make the right difference. And all of us can do it. We all can do it. I hope this rhythmic message was simple and may motivate all of us to lead further discussions in this roundtable. Let me say that global expectations from industry are clear to become a zero carbon industrial sector by the mid-century. We are aware that many nations who have taken the pledge to make their economy net zero by 2050 or before, except China, who has taken target of 2060. Now, the long-term goal today is to create a CO2-free global economy where industry has to play a very important role for decarbonization. The established levers to achieve decarbonization are energy efficiency, renewable electricity, carbon-free fuels, building and industry and nature-based solutions such as afforestation. However, despite doing all this, meeting a 1.5 degree scenario is only possible when process-related emissions, which are independent of existing as well as established levers, are taken care of, new advanced levers in the economic system. And that sustainably reduces and compensates the emission of carbon dioxide. In this regard, carbon capture and utilization is the key subject area. Globally, 1/3 of CO2 emissions come from industries that are essential, of course, to function for human requirements and providing products for better improved lifestyle and infrastructure. Cement is such one product which I call happy product, which provides better improved life and infrastructure. The CCU is the decisive technological breakthrough that would enable the deepest decarbonization of the heavy industry. The complete neutralization of the emission is only possible when a scalable and economically viable option is provided in terms of CCU technology. At the same time, our efforts should continue to build the know-how and large-scale demonstration projects, and I'm sure ESBN can play a very important role. In some geographies where the possibility of enhanced oil recovery is available, CCUS may also be a financial viable option even today. On the utilization front, many value-added green products are being made at lab or pilot scale with CCU, such as synthetic fuels, proteins, carbon rods, inorganic compounds, and the list is always growing now. Cross-sector collaborations are very important towards developing commercially successful models and finding better utilization of CO2. In this regard, cement and textile and chemical industry can come along, and together they can demonstrate cross-sector collaborations. Dalmia Cement would be happy to offer its plant and infrastructure and the knowledge for such collaborative demonstration projects. The example of textile sector, which I have just learned because of this program, is such a good motivation for all. You know, using CO2 instead of water for dyeing application while saving cost and water consumption are kind of solutions the world is looking for, thanks to innovators in textile sector. Simultaneously, cement sector can also provide bulk CO2 for the utilization in the textile sector or the UDS sector or any other sector as a commercial green product for the textile and fashion industry also. This collaboration can prove that CCU has deep potential to connect multiple sectors and industries either as a source or as a sink. It is also to be noted that availability and cost of renewable electricity have a large bearing on the scalability and economic viability of CCU. As renewable energy is expected to become more economical, CCU options will automatically become more attractive in the coming years. Friends, as I mentioned earlier, the path to zero carbon is another opportunity to show that we care for society and the planet. In my view, we should unequivocally support the decarbonization pathway, the CCU, because it makes business sense for all of us as leaders of today. We need to give the right vision to the leaders of tomorrow. The cost of inactions are far greater than cost of actions, and this is how each actor of the world should understand. In this context, I would like to highlight that Dalmia Cement, in its decarbonization effort, has already created a carbon negative roadmap, not the net zero carbon roadmap, but the carbon negative roadmap of achieving the same by 2040, following our business philosophy of clean and green is profitable and sustainable. Some of the key levers identified in our roadmap, which we call Dalmia Determined Contributions DDC as nation's commitment NDCs, are following: usage of 100% renewable electricity, doubling of energy productivity by 2030, and also now we have committed for switching to electric mobility by 2030 by joining a group of EV 100. Replacement of 100% fossil fuel by the use of sustainable biomass, waste, and all such products by 2035. Promoting green blended cement by use of alternate waste materials to conserve mineral resources and energy. And not the least, but the last one, and the most importantly, deploy advanced technological innovations such as CO2 capture and utilization by 2040, but to start next year, and technologies such as green hydrogen use, heat electrification, solar calcination, etc. Our secondary cementitious material utilization rate is nearly 30%, which is one of the highest in global cement industry. We are also one of the largest Portland cement manufacturer in India, and this has made Dalmia Cement as one of the lowest carbon footprint cement company globally. Let me also share the remarks of our UN Secretary General, Mr. Antonio Guterres, in August 20. He said, companies such as Dalmia Cement and Mahindra are driving innovation, but we need many more to join them, and today there are many more such companies. Similarly, in 12th December 20, the COP26 President, Mr. Alok Sharma, also highlighted Dalmia Cement's role. He said, global companies such as Apple, Dalmia Cement, and Movida have made net zero commitment. I am enormously grateful to all those who have come forward with announcement. Dalmia is also recognized as one of the 5 climate defender by BBC world. And we are also, friends, are known and ranked as #1 by CDP on low carbon economy transition. We have already started working on 0.5 million ton carbon capture inflation project, and from next year the activities would start, and thereafter it will go on. Now finally, I would say that post-pandemic world, many things are already changing. The way we do business has changed for each one of us, and to some extent, it is now deeply understood that a healthy society is the first requirement of a long-term sustainable business operation. As availability of the finance is at the right price is critical for deep decarbonization in the cement industry and CCU, financial institutions also need to come out of their 5-year return period investment philosophy. MDBs need to take a leadership role in the financial sector. It is also equally important to bring decarbonization actions and policies in such a way that brings just transition. Projects like sustainable biomass use can be very good example of decarbonization and just transition, as such projects create sizable rural jobs. In the end, I congratulate all the participants attending this roundtable. It shows, friends, your resolve to bring CCU and decarbonization as the main lever to fight climate change and provide green products to the society. It is our positive mindset and courage that resolves difficult and near impossible things. I would like to conclude with ancient Sanskrit verse from the ancient text Ramayana, which is one of the oldest written books in human history on Lord Rama. In Sanskrit it says, Utsaho balvadarya natsyu sahat param balam sotsahese cha lokeshu na kechapi dulladam. It means, friends, enthusiasm is the power of noble man. Enthusiasm is the power of noble man. Nothing is as powerful as enthusiasm. Nothing is difficult in this world for an enthusiastic person. And today I'm able to see many enthusiast organizations, many enthusiast people, and thanks for this opportunity, and we'll take it forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Singhi. You really have set the tone for the meeting today. Now let's see if we can show Sanjeev Bal's video. Kunkanda, are you ready to show that? Kunkanda, are you there?
Yes, but I have the technical problem on my side, so Kunnatika will help sharing the screen.
Okay. Are you ready?
Something came up, but it then disappeared. So I think Natika is trying.
Okay. If you still okay, here it comes. There it is.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for having me. I speak to you today from my kitchen in Los Angeles. The human race is an amazing race. We still continue to live in a bubble of misplaced faith. It's hard to comprehend that a military budget can be 10 times more than an educational budget. It's really hard to comprehend that 782 million people today live below the poverty line. It's even harder to comprehend that 1% of the richest people on this planet contribute and accumulate 82% of the wealth. It's hard to comprehend that 20 fossil fuel companies account for 1/3 of all carbon emissions, while 26,280 species go extinct every year. We continue to ramble forward into 2050, which will see 9.7 billion of us on this planet. with probably 143 million of us classified as climate immigrants. This is not utopia. Our system is flawed. We all live in the law of limitations. I haven't heard of anybody living beyond 122 and a quarter years. Neither have I heard of anybody scoring more than 100% in their examinations. Yet, though we all have our own glass ceilings, money doesn't have a glass ceiling. Money has created greed because it just doesn't have a traffic light system. And that greed has gone on to plunder our planet. And the planet continues to be plundered because of a lack of global unified legislation. Countries still continue to report their growth through something called a gross domestic product, where they account only for production and the goods and services that they create, without taking into account the green economics and the social economics as prescribed by the Genuine Progress Indicator. Neither does it take into account the happiness of people as prescribed by the Gross National Happiness Index. This flawed system has led to overpopulation, where 689 million people today live in abject, utter poverty. Poverty in extremes where they do not even earn more than 1.9 US per day. The illiteracy levels on this planet is a staggering 773 million people. During the pandemic, over 3 billion people did not have access to clean water, whilst 940 million people live without electricity, and 1.5 billion people with different abilities got swept under the carpet. And through all this, we are confronted with a great catastrophe with every 1.5 degrees Celsius of overheating. Now, all this may seem to make me sound like a prophet of doom, but in reality, I'm an eternal optimist. I do believe in the human race. The human race has solved complex problems and will continue to solve complex problems. We've already set up an ecosystem which contains and consists of protocols like the Paris Agreement, the 17 Sustainable Developmental Goals by the UN, NGOs and catalysts like Greenpeace, and a healthy brewing partnership between the private sector, impact capitalists, and committed governments. There is also hope due to breathtaking, groundbreaking technology and the next generation, Generation Z. With all these swirling around, we can clearly see the formation of a very powerful, interconnected ecosystem, which is nothing else but a neural network of solutions. Until then, until this neural network matures and forms, I think business and individuals have a role to play. At Cytex, we save 842 million liters of water per year, which is equivalent to the consumption and intake of water by 1.2 million people. We save 10 million kilowatt hours of energy and plant mangrove forests to protect our coastlines. Our business is circular. We made deep investments into transparent technology, partnerships with cotton farms, processing through a sustainable fabric mill in Vietnam, the fabric from which rolls into our manufacturing facilities in Vietnam and Los Angeles. Besides which, I mean, We're considered to be seat to shelf players, but we've gone way beyond into a brand new world of intersectional environmentalism, a world which has allowed us to build a factory for people with different abilities under a project called Recut. We've taken one step ahead on environmentalism with a mission to clean up global textile waste and to stop the felling of trees. We have a unique patent pending protocol, which allows us to crush textile waste into nanoparticles and convert it into a material which is, yes, a substitute for wood. With all these initiatives and our wheels circling, Cytex will be a carbon neutral organization by 2025. Like I said, individuals have the power to volunteer. Volunteer to educate children, go to schools and educate them. Our children need education. We could volunteer very easily and spend time with people in hospitals, kids in orphanages, and to bring back that respect and dignity that humanity deserves. I would encourage all of you to consume less paper and wood, eat less meat. We are all omnivores, I get that, but we could eat less meat. I encourage you to conserve water and energy. And I would encourage you to please buy less, but instead just reuse it and recycle it. And please be mindful not only about yourself, but the people around you. And it takes nothing to be generous. All these things will allow one drop at a time to make a planet a better place. My name is Sanjeev Bal. I was born in India in 1963. I come from a country which invented the zero and taught the world the power of nonviolent action and the philosophy of karma. I take pride in being the first employee at Cytex, and I've been given a tool to create a business which can be a force for good. My job on a daily basis is to do nothing but to create positive impact. I thank you very much for allowing me to spend time with you, and I encourage you to make our planet a better place. Thank you very much.
Okay, that was Sanjeev's presentation, which is I really enjoyed it, and I had to ask him to do a video. Otherwise, he would have had to give his presentation at after midnight from Los Angeles. So I thought that was a bit too late. So now let's move on to our special addresses, and I would like to now invite Ms. Rose Mwebwasa. She is the director and advisory board secretary of the United Nations Environment Program Climate Technology Center and Network, CTCN. Rose, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. And I truly feel privileged to join this conversation this morning from Copenhagen, where I'm based. Good afternoon to all of you who have joined us today. I'm very pleased to join our colleagues in ESCAP and our colleagues in business at the Global Cement and Concrete Association and the Sustainable Business Network. And most importantly, though, the government of Sweden, who are the incoming chairpersons of the Climate Technology Center and Network. As you would know, the CTCN is the technology mechanism of the UNFCCC, and what we do is support the transfer of environmentally sound technologies from developed to developing countries. So this is really a wonderful opportunity for us to share with you within the realm of what member states are doing and how the UN is enabling that. Ladies and gentlemen, as many Article 10 of the Paris Agreement is what provides the framework for how we can use an enabler and to transition to a low carbon pathway. And it gives us 5 areas of work around which we can use technology to transition to the low carbon pathway. We're invited to use innovation as a tool for transition, innovation in the widest sense of the word, technological, societal, system, and endogenous technologies that are used at home. It also talks to us about implementation, which is where we talk about the actual transfer of technologies that work. There's no need to reinvent the wheel. If we have carbon capture technologies that work in India, there's no reason why we can't use them elsewhere in the world, developing countries. And then it calls us to talk about enabling environment. Industry, governments don't operate in a vacuum. We need policies and regulatory frameworks that enable this innovation to take place, the technologies and the businesses to function sustainably. It also talks about collaboration, which is why I'm very pleased to be part of this meeting today between government, industry, civil society, and the wider society that will enable us to have this transition that we are talking about. And then support across the board. Within the UN, when we talk about leaving no one behind, and that's really the concept. I think our last keynote speaker properly put it, in a global community where we are living at the highest level of abundance in our human existence, it is almost idiosyncratic that we also have such a large number of homeless and hungry and starving people. So we have what we need to really make the changes that we need. And in the Paris Agreement, where I'm responsible for implementing the technology framework, the goal, as you know, is to limit temperature increases to between 1.5 to 2 degrees centigrade pre-industrial levels. We know from the latest report from the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, based on information provided by member states, that we are below meeting that target. In fact, that now we're on a trajectory that is leading us to a net negative, which is where we do not want to be. Therefore, innovation in industry, whether it is cement or textile, is going to be absolutely critical in enabling us to arrive at this goal, especially innovation relating to reducing CO2 emissions. As a global community, we are aiming at net zero by 2050, which by all means seems like at all, but we know it is not unattainable. We know this is the goal that we can reach because we have reached that level of technological development and innovation as human beings, that the same ingenuity that we used to create materials production and consumptive system is the same ingenuity we must deploy to reverse the damage we've done to climate, but also to the global commons generally. And therefore, we can successfully transition to net zero by using sustainable business practices. I will focus on one. Hello, I'm sorry, I'll keep on it. I hope you can still hear me. Yes, so I was just saying that I want to build on the conversation on circularity because I'm talking to industry, which I believe is one of the key important things that we can do as industry to transition to net zero, which is the ultimate goal by 2050. I'd just like to remind us that the Circularity Gap report, if you've all read it, tells us that we are currently only engaged in production at a circular level at just 19% of all production. And this is shocking for the amount of consumption and production that goes on in the world. I will start by telling you what we are doing in the CTCN to address this challenge. So one of the things we are doing in the CTCN to address this challenge is really work, I think, with around 20 countries right now to support them to build their circularity actions. And this is important because, as I told you, the World Circularity Gap Report tells us that we can, in fact, maximize the chances of avoiding the dangerous climate change act now that we are facing to meet the goals of the Paris Agreement. It also tells us that, in fact, 62% of all the greenhouse gas emissions that we have currently come from extraction and processing. Just think about it, 62%, and we've just been told 50% of all greenhouse gas emissions come from the greater Asia subcontinent. Yeah, so that is a big catch up for us to do. And so within circularity, as you all know, the principles are very simple and basic, and we all know them. It's simply about reuse, remanufacturing, and recycling for key sectors, especially such as industry, the cement sector, for example, but also now this textile industry that we know is a big emitter. But it would be the build industry. The point is that for industry and business, there's room for growth. What we have found working with member states as the UN, that in fact, circular economy as contributors. So while there is action principally driven by industry and business such as yourselves here today, the governments need to do a greater role. You remember I told you as part of the Paris Agreement, one of the 5 key themes of the technology framework is to provide an enabling environment. And so we are increasingly working with governments, set up policies and laws and regulatory frameworks for industry to pursue circularity actions, to create incentive frameworks, because circularity is not just about limiting greenhouse gas emissions, it creates jobs, creates new training opportunities and skilling. And so this is something we consider as a business, and we see it as an important contributor to success. So within the CTCN as the technology mechanism of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, I told you, we are working with around 20 countries right now. We are starting off where we think we should in the value chain of scaling up circularity. What are the kind of national, sectoral and policy frameworks government need for which industries in which sector with the highest emissions, so whether it's cement or textile, what kind of roadmaps do they need to set in place to drive up to 2050 net zero? And then we are also working with them with identifying those technologies in those industries, in those sectors that would be most appropriate. There's no one solution fits all, but it is important for countries to know where these technologies are. We are now operating in around 100 countries and counting. And the idea, again, as I said, is to support this transition to low carbon pathway that enables us to get to net zero by 2050. We would like to share with you some of the experiences in the countries we are working with, and this will be done by my colleague in session 3. So we have real examples of how we've worked with countries on carbon capture in the cement industry and other industries, and we hope you will find that useful. I would like to conclude by saying that we are really grateful for this. Within the UN, working with member states who are our principals, we know that we will not be able to achieve the goals of the Paris Agreement without industry and without the private sector. Because a lot of the innovation, especially for those of us who work on technology, comes from the private sector. It is driven by the private sector. The largest investments come in through the private sector. And so we are very pleased to work with you, to share with you some of the experiences we do. And I'd like to conclude by saying that the technology framework was designed around a partnership arrangement. That is why it is a center, but it's also a network. Private sector companies like those work with in this technology. So I would like to encourage all of you colleagues in this forum who are in the industry and business and in the private sector, please join our network. Through this network, we offer business opportunities to work with member states to transfer these technologies. That's what we do. And we provide the seed funding that member states require to enable that technology transfer. So once again, I want to thank you very much for this opportunity, and I look forward to the rest of the conversation. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Rose. Just a reminder to all participants, if you're not speaking please keep your microphones muted. And let me move on now to Ms. Dina McLeod. She is the Chief Executive of the Global Cement and Concrete Association. Dina, you have the floor now.
Great. Thank you very much, Eric. And thank you, ESBN, and all the other partners for inviting the GCCA to be part of this session. And thanks especially to Mr. Mahendra, Mr. Sanjeev, and Ms. Rose for their inspiring words. This concept of intersectional environmentalism is one I will think about very carefully. Really interesting concept. I wanted to note that next week ESCAP is holding its commission meeting with the theme of building back better in Asia. And so it really seems appropriate today that along with textiles and garments, we're talking about our product and the sustainability of the world's most used building materials, which indeed will be crucial to building back better in Asia and in the world. Before kicking off, I wanted to say a few words about the GCCA. The GCCA is a membership organization for clinker producers and therefore concrete producers. We have 40 companies around the world representing 40% of the world's total in terms of clinker production. All GCCA members are sustainability leaders because they sign up to the most rigorous sustainability standards in the industry by joining the GCCA. And I'm very proud to say that our members include Dalmia, SCG Cement, and CNBM, all companies that we're going to hear from today. To show just how committed the GCCA and its members are to achieving greater sustainability, last September, the GCCA launched a climate ambition statement in which members announced their ambition to achieve carbon neutrality by 2050 in line with the Paris Agreement. And since then, the GCCA, we've been working with our members on the roadmap to achieve this. One of the most significant levers for achieving carbon neutrality is, of course, technology. So the subject of today's workshop is immensely important to us. Mahendra mentioned how incredibly important that lever is. And so we're really looking forward to hearing more about what everyone, policymakers and commercial actors, have to say. I will leave that at that, except just to note, one last thought is a science fiction writer I once read said, "The future is already here. It is just unevenly distributed." Well, the organizations we're going to hear from today are where the future already is. We've heard about them, the inspiring examples that they have. They are going to lead the way to make the uncommon become commonplace in the years to come for the good of the planet and to achieve net neutrality by 2050. So with that, let's get the discussion going. I'm really looking forward to the debate. Thanks so much. And over back to you, Eric.
Thank you so much, Dina. That wraps up the opening session. I'd like to thank all the speakers for giving very tone-setting messages to kickstart this meeting. And now I'd like to move on to session 2, which is setting the scene. Why strategies on reducing and utilizing CO2 for cost-effective business, and what we expect to accomplish. So that this part of the meeting will also introduce a proposed project. I'd like to start first with a presentation by Mr. Rajiv Garg. He is the CTCN Regional Manager, Africa and West and Central Asia. And he is actually the very first person I reached out to when we all started to take steps forward with this. So Rajiv, you have the floor.
Thank you, Eric. I was trying to share my presentation. Can you see my presentation? Good. Thank you very much. for the introduction, I work with the Climate Technology Center and Network, and I am the regional manager for the network for the CTCN. As my director Rose had mentioned, CTCN was created through a COP decision, and it was in Durban where the final decision was taken. The CTCN was established as a part of the technology mechanism, and we promote accelerated transfer of environmentally sound technologies for low carbon and carbon resilient development at the request of developing countries. What we also do is provide technology solution, build capacity of the countries, provide advice on policy, legal and regulatory framework, and more importantly, tailor them to the needs of the countries. There are largely three core service areas wherein we operate on. First is we provide technical assistance on demand by the countries in any sector related to climate technology transfer. We also have a huge database, and we maintain a knowledge management system which provides information and knowledge on climate technologies to anyone who wants to access it. And more importantly, we foster collaborations among various technology stakeholders via regional and sectoral experts from the academia, from the private sector, and public research institutions. We are working globally with the developing countries, and there are more than 103 countries where we have provided technical assistance on, and these are on decision-making tools, on feasibility of technology options, on how to scale up the technology options through facilitating financing through various or through the financial mechanism under the Climate Convention, piloting and deploying of climate technologies, tailoring them to suit the local conditions, engaging with the private sector, and definitely prioritizing the technologies according to the needs of the countries. I would, before we go or dive deep into some of the examples which the CTCN has worked on specifically for carbon capture and utilization, I would like to remind everyone about the definition of technology as defined in the IPCC report. Technology is not just a piece of an hardware, but more importantly, specifically in developing countries, technology is also the software or the soft skills which comes with it, the soft skills which are required to adopt a technology, soft skills which are required to maintain the technology, soft skills which are required to scale up the technology through various financing mechanisms. And more importantly, also in the developing country context, the role of the institutions, organizations, the private sector cannot be discounted. And in this regard, the right policy environment, the right enabling environment, the right regulatory environment in the country is the right environment to create innovation, to adopt innovation is also very, very important. And therefore, when we talk about technology transfer, it is not just the hardware. Hardware is an easy part. You can identify a technology, but the more important and the more difficult part is the software and the organization and the institutions in the country. As mentioned in the past or in my earlier slide, we are working in more than 103 countries globally, all developing countries in Africa, in Asia, in the Pacific, in Latin America, and the Caribbean. We have received more than 300 requests for technical assistance, and out of that, we are currently working on 221 of them. Definitely, a number of countries have multiple requests for technical assistance. And as a part of these technical assistance, I'm going to give 3 examples wherein either we are currently working or we have finished working, which relates to the carbon capture and utilization. The first one was in South Africa, and this request for technical assistance we got as early as 2018, and we worked with a cement plant there, and the idea was how to use and the carbon dioxide, or how to use the exhaust gases to convert it into something useful, which is going to lead to GHG emission reduction, as well as using waste heat recovery and other things to reduce or increase the energy efficiency. What we actually did was, and this was quite a very successful example, because the government of South Africa is trying to adopt it. It is trying to scale it up. There is a big research program, an adoption program, which is launched by the government of South Africa. What we did was we really analyzed what are the chemical composition of the exhaust gases of the existing cement kiln, and what are the concrete waste. And the idea was to use these exhaust gases, react it in a reactor with the concrete waste to produce silica, which can again be converted or used as a secondary material, trying of closing the loop, as Rose said, trying to introduce circular economy or circularity in the cement plant with itself. An important aspect was definitely whenever you start talking about CCU, people start talking about the financial, how it is not going to be financially viable and things like that. So we did a financial assessment of the domestic market and the value of the byproducts from the cement production, mainly in form of the calcium carbonate, which can again be itself recycled into the cement plant, but it can also have other uses. And definitely we also worked on developing a business plan and a strategy for the private sector for commercial applications, and what are the technologies which are going to be required. So this was a kind of a very successful experience which we had in South Africa. This was implemented by a Japanese company called Rights. And this is being further taken up by the government of South Africa. The other example means now here means there could be an argument and counter argument against this technical assistance with regards to the net zero carbon thing. But again, we are currently working in Lao PDR. As you all know, Lao has excess of electricity because of huge hydro resources, and sometimes even after exports, they do feel that they have excess of electricity. So what they are doing is we are looking at this as an example where in the excess hydropower can be used to convert water into hydrogen. We take this hydrogen through a reforming process, use this hydrogen to treat the gases which are coming out of the cement kiln or from the cement plant through a reforming process, and the carbon and the hydrogen combine to form methane, or nearly a very clean natural gas. And this natural gas, it can be filled into the cylinders used in the transport sector. Specifically in the Western Europe, there are studies where in this kind of models wherein the natural gas is created and pumped into or put into the existing gas grids. And we are trying to develop a kind of a master plan for this, and this would entail that after this master plan has been developed, actionable roadmaps and strategies and action plans can be developed, regulations can be created, and policy measures can be set up to support the development of this technology further. We are again currently working in Lao PDR on this technical assistance request. The third and the last example which I'm going to give is in Vietnam. We have yet not started working on this, but we have received a request for technical assistance wherein they are looking at feasibility for carbon mineralization by using carbon dioxide issued from the coal-powered power plants, and for recycling of the ash. So we have yet not started working on it, but very soon we are going to initiate the activities against this technical assistance. This technical assistance also goes back to show that there is a real appetite of the countries to explore the options, to explore what carbon capture and utilization can do how feasible the options would be and what are the different applications in which we can utilize or carbon capture and storage. The whole of CTCN approach towards this project, as Eric mentioned, when we started first discussing about what we can do, what the countries need, how we can frame this thing up. The CT, and as also what Rose has mentioned in her keynote address, I mean, CTCN is very open to enhance collaboration and partnership. An important aspect of the CTCN work is the last word, N, that is network. We have a network of more than 650 institutions which are working on various areas, both for climate change mitigation as well as climate change adaptation, working on various technologies in all the focus areas, and this includes carbon capture and utilization. So we have an active partnership and a very active network. CTCN, as a part of the technology framework of the UNFCCC, we are focusing on transformative technologies. We are focusing on innovation, on how to develop applications, how to develop innovative products, as well as innovative processes, which leads to the implementation of transformative technologies. The biggest asset which the CTCN has is that as a part of the technology mechanisms, more than 160 countries have designated or appointed their technology focal points. Now, these are government appointed officials. So we have a kind of a direct connections with the government through these technology focal points. Any request for technical assistance is routed through the nationally designated entities of these technology focal points. Specifically for this project, we think that this is going to be quite beneficial because it would help integrate carbon capture and utilization if the request comes to the CTCN into the overall nationally determined contribution or into an action plan which the countries are creating for GHG emission reduction. Definitely one more important point is even after we have tried and tested and demonstrated the use of technology, how it can be scaled up. So the link with the financing mechanism, even if it is a private sector, the private sector during the initial stages would be looking for some kind of a financial mechanisms to scale up the implementation of technologies. And this is again where CTCN comes into picture because we are mandated by the COP decisions to work very closely with the financing mechanisms. We have been working with the Green Climate Fund. We have been working with the JEF. We have been working with various multinational multilateral development banks and other agencies. And we are willing to provide support on creating this linkage either by creating market-based mechanisms or through the bodies under the financing mechanism by preparing bankable project proposals and concepts and ideas. We look forward for this fruitful collaboration in the future, and we would be very happy to support the countries and the project in whatever way it is deemed feasible. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Rajiv. Okay, let's quickly move on to the next presentation, which will be by Dr. Cristina Martinez. She is the Senior Specialist, Environment and Decent Work, Asia Pacific Coordinator, Green Jobs and Just Transition for the International Labour Organization. She is based also here in Bangkok. Cristina, you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Eric. And I renew my thanks to the ESCAP colleagues, the Sustainable Business Network, Sustainability ESBN, and also to the Swedish Development Agency for the support that they are giving us with the project that I will introduce now, and to the colleagues of the UNFCCC IGES Regional Collaboration Center that have been instrumental for the discussion today with some of the points and also the fashion charter. But let me also thank you very much at the opening session. I think the speakers set up a high-level commitment. Mr. Sanjeev, Mr. Mahendra, Ms. Rose, and Ms. Dina all have, and the same the speaker just before me, we have here the opportunity perhaps to continue our collaboration towards COP26 with a very interesting discussion putting together two sectors, manufacturing sectors, industry sectors that one might think are very different, the textiles and garment and the cement. But we have seen during the opening session how the two sectors share the commitment and actually can bring together solutions. We at the ILO are very worried about employment, as you know, about the standards for employment, about good jobs, and how to transition to the greening of the economy, preserving and the jobs, or even better, we want green jobs to be part of every sector, every job that is in our society, because green jobs are jobs that are good for people, good for the economy, and are jobs that preserve and achieve the carbon emissions and the Paris Agreement goals. My colleague Samantha is assisting with this presentation. I want to tell you very briefly about a project that we have addressing the change and the transition in the textile and garment sector in Asia. And this covers some key countries such as Cambodia, Vietnam, Indonesia, but also many of all of the other countries in Asia that can share knowledge and collaborate and discuss how to progress the just transition in the garment sector. In particularly, we are launching today the Just Transition Toolkit for the textile and garment sector with a report that Dr. Sharp will share with us a little bit later in session 3, which I will moderate. If I was not moderating, I will join also the session on cement, because I'm sure it's going to be very interesting. And fortunately, we have the recording going on, so we can go back to these discussions, important discussions. Next slide, Sam, please. So the decent work in the garment sector, supply chains in Asia, is addressing a series of outcomes. The one that we, and I particularly leading with an excellent team, is on the outcome number 4, we call it, that is industry stakeholders more effectively applying knowledge and tools to promote environmental sustainability across the sector. So if you go to the next one, Sam, please, you can see there the focus areas. Look at the how to strengthen industrial relations, and of course the employers organizations, part of the ILO tripartite governance are primarily featured here today, but we also have the workers organizations and the governments. So these tripartite constituents really help to implement a change in the sector through strengthening the industrial relations. We also have a focus on closing the gender gap by developing knowledge, training, advocacy, and addressing some of the equality pay in the sector, and supporting maternity protection, work-family balance, and strengthening women's voice and leadership. The third outcome is focuses on promoting or improving enterprise productivity and competitiveness with concrete tools. and insights to drive factory upgrading and improving working conditions and sustainability. And then we have the component on environmental sustainability that will be the driving of session 3, where we will discuss further with industry on this. And we have a component that brings all together, as I said before, into a knowledge sharing platform across ASEAN countries. Next slide, please, Sam. The environmental sustainability has different goals. On one side, we look at gaps and weaknesses in national environmental regulatory environment. We also look at knowledge on eco-innovation and greener production in the garment industry. We also focus on industry relevant guidance and support provided to help manufacturing understand and apply environmental decent work principles in the workplace. And we have developed, and some of the issues that we will discuss today, is the just transition guidance for the garment sector, including analysis and options for future priorities and activities. And it's in this just transition toolkit where we find the adjusted and customized tooling for the garment sector. As you can see in the next slide, please, Sam. So what it implies to have industry guidance for just transition planning. This is an application of the ILO Just Transition Guidelines, a document that was prepared by the tripartite constituents of the ILO, workers, employers, and governments joined together over a week to discuss how just transition can be implemented in any industry sector. So the document itself that you have there, and we can put it in the chat, the web link, if you want to download it. The document itself is generic. It includes, however, 9 specific areas that require action and adaptability to particular industry sectors. And then with this project, we are developing further what a just transition toolkit is for the garment and textile and garment sector. In the same way, we could do a toolkit for the cement industry, but we are not there yet. Although I can see already that there are advanced tools in the industry that we could work with you to develop this just transition toolkit as well for the sector. The toolkit works together with learning modules for the industry and industry guidance that can be applied. We are developing this for the Asian industry, but can be applied to other regions of the world as well. And I think we have the last slide, Sam, the next one. So when we look at what is inside this just transition toolkit, you can see in this slide that we have reports, we have webinars, we have videos, we have examples, we have explainers. We also have a textile eco-innovation research network associated to it, providing further linkages to the in-country examples and advice and expertise. And this webinar, for example, I was just discussing with the team that is a very, very good example, and we should have a strat from the webinar, including in the Just Transition Toolkit as well. Today, we are launching the report on reducing the footprint, how to assess carbon emissions in the garment sector in Asia. Samantha will, Dr. Sharp will provide a very quick overview of the messages from the report in session 3. So Sam, I think this is the last slide for me, right? Oh, okay, yes. So thank you so much. And Eric, this is back to you. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you very much, Christina. Okay, it's now it's my turn to give a presentation, and I see I have a share tray. So let me see if I can share my presentation. Can everyone see it?
Yes.
Okay. All right, thank you so much. Yes, the main focus of this roundtable was to see if we could forward a project and on a strategy on reducing and utilizing CO2 for cost-effective business. I don't know why it's running by itself. Let's see, how do I get it to not? Hold on. Oh, okay. I guess someone else is running it for me. Okay, so can we go back one slide, please? Okay, thank you. Okay, so I just wanted to highlight before we move ahead that this project is a team of organizations that are very important to move this forward. And first, under the ESBN Task Force on Disaster and Climate Risk Reduction, our project partners are the GCCA, as we've heard from already, CTCN, ILO, and then the UNFCCC and the /IGES. They have a regional collaboration center here in Bangkok, and of course ESCAP. And we have also invited the government of Sweden to sit in on this event. So next slide, please. So I think, as you're aware, I mean, and it's already been highlighted that the textile and garment sector accounts for a significant portion of global carbon emissions, and estimates range between 6 and 8% of global totals. And the cement industry is responsible for approximately 7%. So together, this is very significant. And why did we come up with these two sectors when there's other sectors such as agriculture and so forth? Actually, at the beginning of this, I wanted to do a number of different sectors, including agriculture. However, I was asked by my principals just to narrow it down to 2 sectors, so I have done that. And I think the photo on the left of the slide indicates the importance of both garments and cement in our life. So next slide, please. Okay, so we come up with the strategies for reducing and utilizing CO2 for cost-effective business. And the objective of this project is to strengthen capacity of the textiles and garment and cement sectors in project countries, which we have already identified within the Asia-Pacific region, and to access and apply know-how to reduce and utilize CO2 emissions. By practical demonstration, uptake, the project aims to reduce CO2 emissions from point sources such as industrial processes to prevent their release in the atmosphere. Okay, next slide. So how are we going to do this? Well, through resource efficiency activities would be one example, from energy efficiency, renewable energy, adopting circular economy principles and new environmentally sustainable materials and processes, and the phase out of unsustainable and hazardous materials and chemicals. So Sustainable technologies will play an important part, such as machinery and processes that reduce and recycle water and chemical and minimize air pollution. And thirdly, which at this stage applies more to the cement industry, would be CO2 capture and utilization, CCU, innovations where captured CO2 is converted into commercial products and the pathways that we replace a more carbon intensive alternative. Okay, so briefly on the project components and their activities. Firstly is capacity building on CO2 reduction and utilization know-how and its application by project partners, consultants, especially training of national business development partners, development departments, excuse me. In the textiles and garment and cement sectors, we want to conduct CO2 reduction and utilization assessments in plant to find ways to apply CO2 reduction and utilization options that are technically feasible and let me highlight cost effective. So for business, we're going to stress practical demonstration of reutilization from industry and CO2 and innovative solutions and pathways towards climate-friendly enterprise development for possible uptake. And we want to review and evaluate national policies and measures and make recommendations for policies that can be adopted. And finally, we want what this whole roundtable really is highlighting is regional cooperation. So through the establishment of a network of CO2 reduction and utilization practitioners, businesses, policymakers, and regulators. So next slide, please. So part of this through our regional cooperation is to create a CO2 reduction and utilization guide for business. A CO2 reduction and utilization guide will be developed and include methodologies to uptake, develop carbon neutral entrepreneurship, and apply CO2 reduction and utilization options in existing industries. So the guide will also support businesses in Asia Pacific to address climate change through CO2 reduction and carbon capture and utilization to transition toward net zero emissions and increased resilience. So finally, the guide is intended to spur our business leaders, our policymakers, financiers, and other stakeholders working with industry to actualize transformational carbon neutral change. And I think key to this, and this was brought up also by CTCN, is to do this, we have to call on national focal points. And national focal points will play a significant role in achieving the objective of the project. The extent to which they can convince various industry sector companies of the importance of CO2 reduction and utilization options and motivate them to participate in the project depends on the industrial network that the national focal point possesses, as well as its stature and recognized by industry. So here we want CTCN call on them to help link our project national focal points with CTCN focals to scale up activities after the completion of the project. So it's not just a project where it goes on for 3-4 years and then it just ends. This has to be something that's sustainable and able to carry it forward. And additionally, we need to reach the highest levels in government to also highlight the importance of this. And so it'll be important to have ministers and senior representatives from ministries and confederations to present at national level events. So that's my final slide, and I hope everybody was able to hear me. There's a lot of background noise here inside the mall, but I couldn't take any chances from doing this at home. So I'd like to thank all very much, and let me now start, let me make a few announcements before we start the parallel session. So this is where it gets a little technically interesting for us, because if you're interested in staying with session 3, which is reducing carbon emissions from the textile and garment sector, you can stay where you are. You don't need to go anywhere. That's going to be moderated by Christina. So session 4, if you want to join session 4, which is moving ahead with CCU in the cement industry, then you'll need to click out of this link and move to the second link that I think we all received in our email. So I need to also stress that each session, since they're running in parallel, we have exactly 1 hour, and I think this puts more pressure on the people in session 4, because then after their session finishes, they will have to rejoin the original link. So let's see if we can start that now. And if there are problems, I will be checking the chat, and then we'll try to work through those. So let me pass this all over now to the moderators of session 3 and session 4. Okay, thank you so much. Let me give you a couple, Christina, let's wait maybe 2 minutes just so others can join session 4, and then we can begin.
Yes, and thank you, Eric. Your presentation was excellent. So thank you for the opportunity to collaborate with you.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, I'm going to also join the cement part, so I will. I want to join both. I really wanted to have the sessions follow each other, but
no,
it would have been almost 5 hours. So
yeah, no, it's good that the moderators use that you join the cement. You can tell us later, and the colleagues. Looking forward to hear the results of the session.
Okay, thank you.
So for the garment colleagues, please stay here, and the cement followers can join the other link. And I would suggest that the colleagues in the garment, in the panel of the session, the speakers in the session, turn on the cameras. Also, perhaps then if we have problems with sound, we can turn off the cameras and only put it back when we speak. So far, it's working okay. We have some challenges in Bangkok, as you have heard, with the outbreak. So this session is very special for us as well, because we have been able to proceed despite the difficulties. I think I will kick off. Laurel is there, as well as Samantha, the speakers. I can see everybody. And Laurel will help us also with the moderation of the chat window, where you can put comments and questions. But let me kick off first, saying again a warm welcome to our session. And we are going to have a discussion on emission reduction in the garment sector. We have very impressive panelists. As you know, and Eric already mentioned as well, that the textile and garment sector accounts for a significant proportion of global carbon emissions, and the estimates runs between 6 and 8% of global totals. The emission reductions associated with achieving the Paris Agreement goal of limiting warming to between 1.5 to 2 degrees above pre-industrial levels are very significant. And with this challenge in mind, we will discuss at this panel how textile and garment businesses are approaching CO2 reductions in the sector and what progress has been made to date. And to set up the scene, we have Dr. Samantha Sharp, presenting key messages from the ILO report we are launching here today, titled Reducing the Footprint, How to Assess Carbon Emissions in the Garment Sector in Asia. After the presentation, we will go to the speakers in the panel, to the panelists, to give us some kickoff comments. We have prepared some questions as well, and then we will open also for the participants' view. For all of you that are here with us, also you are experts, your opinion and questions matter to us, and we want to capture your contribution. So you can, as soon as we kick off with presentations and key points, use the chat if you want to put a comment or questions. As I said, Laurel will help us with the moderation, and later on open to everybody. Without more to say, Laurel, I know that we have some issues with the time. If you see that I'm not doing that well, please tell us. I think the discussion is important. We want to hear from everybody, if possible. So, Dr. Sharp, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Christina, and thank you everyone. And it's really fantastic to be here, and I'm really looking forward to the discussions that will follow afterwards. I'm just going to share my screen, so please hold for 1 second. There we go. Okay, can you see the screen okay?
Yes, we can
Yes.
see it. And Dr. Sharp, I didn't introduce you properly, probably because I know you very well, but Dr. Samantha Sharp is a research director at the Institute for Sustainable Future at the University Technology Sydney, a knowledge partner of the ILO, a warrior of just transition and green jobs, and we are very, very, very honored to have you here with us and working with us for the just transition of the garment sector. Please go ahead.
Thank you again, Christina, for that very kind introduction. So yes, I'm just going to talk very, very quickly because I really want to hear from the panelists as well. So as Christina and some of the other speakers has mentioned in the previous sessions, like the textile and garment sector accounts for a significant proportion of global carbon emissions. And so estimates do range, but they put it in the range of 6 to 8% of total carbon emissions. So some 1.7 billion tonnes of carbon emissions per year. And as we know, the Paris Agreement sets out a pathway for us to limit global warming to less than 2 degrees above pre-industrial levels, obviously with the preferable target of limiting warming to 1.5 degrees, although this preferable target is starting to slip from our reach. And the emissions reduction associated with achieving these targets are really significant. So to reach this target, we'd need to decline global emissions by 45% on 2010 levels by 2030, so this decade, and be at net zero by 2050. So in the fashion and textile and garment sector, there's obviously been lots of action and activity around emissions reduction. In fashion and garment, stakeholders came together in 2018 in the lead up to the COP in 2018 to commit to climate action with the formation of the UNFCCC Fashion Industry Charter for Climate Action. And as part of that commitment, the signatories to that charter made a commitment to set pathways to 30% emissions reduction by 2030 from 2015 baseline, and to also be net zero by 2050. So these are significant challenges. So as Christina mentioned, sorry, I've just lost my place for 1 second. Oh, no. Sorry. as Christina mentioned in the earlier session on the ILO project on decent work in the garment sector supply chains in Asia project, which is being implemented with the financial support from the Swedish Development Agency. The focus of the project is enhancing environmental sustainability in the sector. And so part of that work is also looking at how we can reduce emissions in a way that achieves a transition to a socially and ecologically sustainable global economy, but in a way that's just. So that's the just transition element that was earlier mentioned. But first, to address decarbonisation, we first need to understand how emissions are generated across the sector. And so the report that we're sharing with you today really provides an overview or kind of a ready reckoner for how that's done across the sector at the moment. And it profiles the two main methods of assessing greenhouse gas emissions across the sector. And it also details some of the findings or the key findings for how those methods have been implemented across the sector in recent years. The report also highlights the implications and limitations of those measurements methods, because they all have pros and cons and limitations, and it also looks at the implications of that current pattern of emissions and therefore the decarbonisation needs across the sector. So energy use is a major contributor to the carbon emissions in the textile and garment sector. Nothing new there, and not unexpected. Although emissions also occur from other non-energy sources, such as land clearing around agriculture for growing fibre, and chemical production, and if we also include the leather sector, the raising of livestock associated with leather. But if we go back to the energy demand, where the energy demand is highest when it comes to essentially the wet processing stages of garment production. And this is the dyeing and the finishing, where energy is used to create steam, to heat water, and also for drying fabrics. And the carbon intensity of the energy sources used where production takes place is also important. So whether coal or natural gas or increasingly renewable energy is used for electricity, this can have a big impact on the emissions intensity of the production. So where coal or natural gas is used, that translates to higher emissions intensity. So the opportunities for emissions reduction are clearly in energy efficiency, and that's across the whole sector, but specifically in those high energy intensity production activities. There's also opportunities around switching fuel sources and switching to renewable sources. And as was picked up by Ms. Rose in session 1, there's also momentum from other areas of the supply chain that can also impact on carbon emissions in production, such as design decisions about the types of textiles that are used in garments, also the quality and the longevity of the garment and how it's used and cared for over its lifetime, and also this emerging focus on circularity and how that plays into the supply chain. As the speakers in the first session also highlight, the private sector really has a critical role to play here, both in innovating and also implementing those innovations that will provide those emissions reduction. So hopefully, if you have a look at that report, we'll give some insights into where the emissions are currently accruing across the supply chain. So we have an idea of the emissions reduction required, but also where those emissions are accruing across the supply chain. But what we need to focus on now is how do we achieve these emissions reductions? How do we meet these targets? What incentives and support and policies need to be in place to achieve that emissions reduction? and what will be the implications of these emissions reduction and the resulting changes in production and consumption systems, particularly on employment and the world of work. And and how do we make these changes in the context of the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic? As you would all be very, very aware, the COVID-19 pandemic has had a really devastating impact on the sector. So how do we think about recovery, but also how do we think about recovery in the language of UN ESCAP to build back better? And I'm sure we'll have a lively discussion about these questions in the coming panel session. Just one thing I wanted to come back to was the employment impacts. So the scale and the pace of the system-wide changes in garment manufacturing required to meet the climate action and also to meet the SDGs will have a significant impact on the world of work and particularly in specific components of the supply chain. So reducing carbon emissions will require changes to business models alongside technological process innovation. And to achieve these changes will require investments in human and financial capital over a sustained period of time to ensure a just transition takes place. Now, what's a just transition? I mean, and this is really where for ILO, they have a clear role to play in this space, because climate action as well as climate change will significantly impact jobs and livelihoods and challenge our ability to achieve sustainable development. There's a lot of positives that will come out of addressing climate change, but there will also be negative impacts, and these tend to be geographically concentrated. So whilst the ambition for low carbon, environmental, sustainable economy is growing, we have to understand that in certain geographies and certain communities and sectors, there will be negative impacts on employment and labour markets as we have industrial activities moving away from carbon intensive to low carbon. And these employment and economic activity will also change with that transition. And industrial change of this scale is rarely smooth. So I think a key question to think about as we go into the panel session is that not only how do we accelerate emissions reduction and the ambition for these reductions, but also identify and take care of those businesses and communities and workers who may carry a burden of this transition, so that we achieve both social and environmental sustainability. And so on that note, I would like to finish and pass back to Christina, and I look forward to the discussions in the panel session. So thank you.
Samantha, Dr. Sharp, thank you so much for highlighting the key points from the report, or some of the key points from the report. I think it's very important, the last message that you said about the role of the business in the garment sector, but also the role of the knowledge economy for the garment sector. A small business providing knowledge services to the garment sector, providing those services that matter for emission measure and emission reduction. And in some of, not all countries have developed knowledge-intensive business services sector for the garment industry. I think Mr. Asif might have also some highlights on that later on in the panel, but certainly is something that we can assist or at least discuss how businesses became active because they mean business, and we need the business of the knowledge intensity sector to provide those services for reducing emissions in the garment sector. I'm going to now start with the panel, and we have one slide to introduce the panelists. Could I have that slide now, please? I think it was Samantha is providing that slide. We have, yes.
Oh, no, sorry. Wait, oh.
Yes. One more. Yes, exactly. Thank you. So we will have Mr. Asif Ibrahim. You already heard about him, but I repeat here that he's the director of the Bangladesh Garment Manufacturers and Exporters Association in Bangladesh, one of the key countries where the garment industry is happening, and actually one of the key countries for us as well in the garment project in Asia. We also have Ms. Anya Safira with us, a stakeholder engagement and public affairs manager from H&M Group Production in Indonesia. Thank you for coming. We also have Ms. Oang Ngujin Gok Kim, Health and Safety, Environment and Sustainability Manager from Cytex in Vietnam. Thank you for being with us. And we have Ms. Liu, Deputy Director of Research and Consulting Department of Social Responsibility, Office of China National Textile and Apparel Council from China. And last but not least is Mr. Bradley Abbott, Project Lead, Switch Garment Cambodia, Global Green Growth Institute. Thank you so much to all of you for leading the discussion with kickoff comments today. So allow me to go over the questions that we propose for discussion. Sam, if you can put the questions there. Yes, you can see there that we would like to discuss what are the opportunities for business to sustainability reduce emissions. What business models and technological process and social innovation is the sector pursuing to reduce emissions, and how does the sector combine environmental and social sustainability? I read these questions and I draw your attention to them because in the chat window, participants can already put their comments if they wish, or further questions for Samantha and the panel as they speak, and we will open for comments in a moment after the main comments from the panelists. I'm going to invite each of the panelists to provide a maximum of 5 minutes, respond to the questions, and I have some guidance for the panelists, but you are very welcome to jump in and change the question or react to Samantha or what has been said before during the opening session. So let me go first to Mr. Brad and ask you about the roadblocks to energy efficiency as opportunities. We want to focus on opportunities for businesses to sustainability. What are the roadblocks you see on energy efficiency? The floor is yours, and please turn on your camera if you haven't done it yet, so that people can also see.
I think I'm on. Thank you very much. Yeah, when I think about roadblocks or barriers to energy efficiency in the garment and textile sector, I mean, I think we have to think generally about these things for any private sector business. And, you know, when we think about barriers to investing in making capital investments or addressing energy efficiency, fundamentally private businesses, they you know, we have to link energy efficiency to their strategic interests, and these things, of course, are first and foremost, how does it make my business more profitable, competitive? How is it going to make my business more stable and give me more continuity? I think when we talk about, for example, the garment sector, and interesting, giving them more interested in energy efficiency, there's a few key things to remember. And from the just as an example, the garment sector in Cambodia, I mean, these are businesses generally that have really short business horizons. They're running as fast as they can just to stay in business. So when we think about enabling energy efficiency, we have to strongly link energy efficiency to things like profitability, things they care about: profitability, quality control, production reliability. So for me, just fundamentally, those are things that we always have to do for energy efficiency. We all know we're talking about different things about reducing energy costs, but businesses typically they think about these strategic issues first. And I'll just my last comment, and I read briefly the ILO's new report, but coming across this term about integration, and I think that's fundamental for textiles and garment sector. We have to, if I'd have to say one area for integration and making this connection is in social compliance. When I talk to brands or factories, this is another issue. Of course, it's an important issue. It's a fundamental issue, and I would really like all of the sector, when they talk about social compliance, to talk about energy efficiency, because energy efficiency, it's linked to all parts of the business, but especially social issues, things like heat stress. So, the idea of integration, I think, is really, really important. And also, just lastly, integrating with all the different stakeholders. I have my colleagues from GMAC online, and I think it's the Garment Manufacturing Association of Cambodia, and I think it's important to employ all the different stakeholders and work closely together. It doesn't happen all the time, but improving things like energy efficiency and linking to strategic issues takes these all stakeholders, but also local experts that are tuned into the sector. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Brad. Very interesting that you focused on the integration as part of the thinking that you have been doing around the session and the question and the report. I know that you are leading the Switch Asia important project also in Cambodia, and perhaps later on in the discussion you can talk a little bit more about this important initiative in Cambodia. But let me now move into question 2 regarding business models and the processes and social innovation in the sector and what we can do to reduce emissions. And we have now Ms. Anya. I'm going to ask you a different question, tackling question 2, but what really does circularity mean in the Indonesian context, and how does that contribute to carbon emissions at all? You are part of the Fashion Charter, the Unifica Charter, and in Indonesia, what that charter brings to your work in Indonesia. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Christina. Quite a heavy question, yeah? I will try to explain it. I will explain a little bit circularity concept, not as a definition of Indonesia, but more on the perspective of H&M. For us, there are 2 main points here: less waste and reduce harmful impact throughout our production. I think it's also aligned with the just launched report, whereas it says that carbon emission is part of the whole new circular economy approach, right? So in the quest of transition to that circularity concept, of course, we will need a lot of help. We talk about a collaboration, we talk about working together, public-private partnership. I think it's a journey, but at H&M, we believe, and it's quite aligned with the data in the report, where it says that fabric production, we call it tier 2, but in the report it says fabric production, including yarn and dyeing and finishing, responsible for the biggest chunk of emission, right? We well aware of that. We also track it in our internal data. That's why we have set quite an ambitious goal that by 2030 we will only use a recycled material and or sustainably sourced material. So we're fully aware of that. And we are not stopping there. If in the report it's also talking about garment makers. As mentioned by Bradley previously, energy efficiency is very important. Yes, we believe that. We've started our energy efficiency project with the help from UNIDO from our ECP project, Resource Efficient and Cleaner Production 5 years ago. And we continue with our internal efficiency project. I don't have exact data of improvement so far, but we just launched our sustainability report 2 weeks ago. You are feel free to assess that. We have some data when it comes to emission, water, and chemical as part of the whole sustainability improvement that we have on the report. So that's one thing. And also in the report, it also says about customer. That customer face also have quite a footprint there, right? Brand like H&M, we have the opportunity to communicate this, to walk hand in hand with our lovely customer to reduce this carbon footprint. Either it's through information on the garment, on the product, from our website or social media. The hope is that customer will be able to make informed or conscious decision and how to do with the garment, how frequent they washed it, to what temperature they want to wash it, something like that. This will also mean that they will also have a, understanding what to do with their outworn garment. Throw it in a waste bin, or bring it back to H&M store, because we also have garment collecting initiative, and we would like to, using the whole circularity concept, bring it back to life, basically. That's about circularity. And the question about, let's say, UNFCCC. We all know that a fashion stakeholder, we committed to such goal, right? And for me, I joined part of the UNFCCC. There's a lot of working group there. There is focus on material, focus on public advocacy, focus on sustainable production as well. I am heavily involved on public advocacy working group. And in a country like Indonesia, where renewable energy is very limited, public affair will play a very important role. So with all signatory that has operation in Indonesia, we join force and would like to aggregate our demand to the government, so that the hope is that there will be more options to source for renewable energy in Indonesia. For H&M, circularity and circular and renewable supply chain is something that needs to join together like this, and it must not cluster as just environment challenge only or environment program only. It might start there, but it also connected somehow with social and economy, as explained by other speaker before me. So creating an enabling environment through collaboration will be the key. That's for now. Christina, back to you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Anya, and particularly because some of the issues that you have mentioned, especially with the COVID-19, is still hitting the sector and the brands and the employers and the workers. These new business models might have even more sense and might play a bigger role. Let's go now, because Laurel is already pushing me a little bit with the time. Let's go now to Ms. Liu from China. Ms. Liu, what roles do you see for industrial clusters and home workers in advancing these business models and new business models? The floor is yours.
It's my pleasure. Yeah.
Please turn on your camera if possible. I cannot hear you very well.
Now, share a series of measures taken by Textile to implement our.
I think we cannot hear you, unless somebody else tell me that is my equipment.
Hello?
Yes, now yes. Go ahead.
Yeah, okay. I'd like to share a series of measures taken by Syntec to implement environmental protection responsibility governance, reduce carbon emissions, and promote green development. You know, China is the world's largest producer and exporter of textile and garment, and also has the largest consumer population in the world. In terms of scale, China's total fiber processing account for about 15% of the world's total. Chemical fiber production accounts for about 17%, and the total export account for about 1/3. Reducing carbon emissions of China's textile and garment industry will have an important practical role and far-reaching industry significance on global climate change. So, Syntec makes an overall planning and systematic promotion on the industry's carbon reduction, green transformation, and development from two aspects. Firstly, in the dimension of vertical industry chain, Syntec promoted the construction of environmental protection responsibility and the governance of green development model in the whole product life cycle. China has the largest textile industry chain in the world. The upstream and downstream enterprises of the industrial chain have different interest demands for reducing carbon emissions. We need to deepen the whole life cycle management, accelerate the construction of waste textile recycling system, and explore the development of textile recycling action and comprehensive utilization information platform of waste textiles with the goal of achieving the replacement of recycled materials. On the one hand, we strengthen the green management system, promote the construction of CSR, constantly enrich the environmental responsibility management tools and methods, and broaden the applicable subjects and fields. We will improve green standards, green certification system, and frontier basic research. From 2005, Syntec drafted CSC 9000T mean Corporate Sustainability Compact 9000 for textile and apparel industry, including 3 responsibility criteria, namely human responsibility, environmental responsibility, and market responsibility, with the help of standards and guidelines to guide the construction of environmental protection responsibility of the industry, cultivate the awareness of enterprises, and enhance the ability of green development. On the other hand, we committed to strengthen green technology innovation, developed green manufacturing technology, resource comprehensive utilization technology, and key technologies of waste fiber products recycling, promoted cleaner production technology in the whole textile industry chain. Yeah. Secondly, we have carried out innovation of sustainable development of industrial cluster and industrial parks in horizontal dimension. At present, there are more than 200 textile and garment industrial clusters in China. There are in-depth a large number of small and medium-sized enterprises in this industrial cluster to enhance the green development capacity of this kind of enterprises and reduce carbon emissions. It is necessary to cooperate with local government departments and research institutions to carry out carbon management, information disclosure, and green industrial governance construction oriented sustainable development. Research and special training activities on common technologies have been carried out by ESCAP, which has enhanced their environmental responsibility awareness and enhanced their green development ability. And we encourage leading companies as the main body establish green textile product development alliance, sustainable fashion trade research legal, collaboration for sustainable development of WISPO and other technology development platform.
Ms. Liu, thank you so much. Please, the sound is not that good. If you could go to the conclusion. Thank you.
Okay.
You want to provide a final conclusion to your very interesting address? I don't know if the sound dropped here. I think the sound is dropping. Let's go back to Ms. Liu later on, but Ms. Oang, we want to hear from you as well. We noticed that Cytex has a lot of different certifications. What is the benefit of this approach? And please be quite precise, because we want to go to the next panelist and then to have at least some time for questions from the participants. Thank you. Go ahead.
Thanks for your question. CITES has a lot of different certifications that some of you have worked on. CITES is GOTS, OCS, GRS certified, Blue Sign certified, ISO 14001 certified, and B Corp certified. These certifications are all focused on reducing the environmental impact and sustainability. We would like to highlight some information as below. CITES is only Blue Sign certified laundry in the world. Blue Sign is a system provides safer and more sustainable environments for people to work in and everyone to live in. Blue Sign chases each textile part along the manufacturing process, making improvements at every stage from factory floor to finished product. CITES became a certified B Corp in July 2019 with an overall score of 105.6. Certified B corporations are a new kind of business that balances purpose and profit. They are legally required to consider the impact of their decisions on their workers, customers, suppliers, community, and environment. This is community of leaders, driving global movement of people using business as a force for good. Certified B corporations are businesses that meet the highest standards of verified social and environmental performance, public transparency, and legal accountability to balance profit and purpose. The HIT facility environmental module is a sustainability assessment tool designed by SET that standardizes how facilities measure and evaluate their environmental performance years over year. As a member of SAC since 2012, CITEC has calculated its HIT firm score, which verifies high achievements with 83 to 90 score for 4 years. With distance, we are aligned with our business model that had built from day one with a philosophy to do the right thing. Since it started different projects to limit the impact on the environment nearly 10 years ago. We want to keep improving the way we do things and always include environment in the decision we make. That planet gives us everything we have and we work in, so we must do our best to reserve it. Besides that, Vietnam provides us with the rich natural resources. We must do all the can to protect it. So the benefit is of this approach is the key to gaining trust, transparency, which requires us to lead with integrity and honesty. We believe that
it's terrible that I have to do this job, but I have the pressure of session 4 that want to come back. So if you can go to the conclusion, then we have Mr. Asif giving us the last panel address. Thank you.
Yes.
You want to conclude?
Yeah, we believe that CITEC is aiming to be the most sustainable manufacturer in the world. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Wang. And we go very quickly to Mr. Asif because we want to know that to have his comments on how important to export reputation is focusing on reducing emissions. Are customers concerned? And would customers' interest impact the level of adoption of emission reduction activities? The floor is yours. Colleagues in the call, please put your comments on the chat and we will get these comments for the summary of the session or your questions if we get kicked out by the plenary again. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bangladesh is the second largest exporter of apparels in the world after China. And this contributes to about 84% of the country's foreign exchange earning. And it is about 13% of the gross domestic product of Bangladesh. So this sector plays a very, very important role in Bangladesh economy. And Bangladesh ready-made garment sector in recent times has made notable efforts in addressing sustainability issues, considering some core areas, as was mentioned by my previous panelist, as circular economy, as SDG alignment, decarbonization, energy efficiency, chemical management, water resource management, green initiatives, waste generation, and climate action. The growth of LEED certified green factories in Bangladesh has been commendable in the recent past. Currently, we have 135 LEED garment factories, green garment factories, which are certified by the US Green Building Council. and 9 out of the world's top 10 green garment factories are in Bangladesh. Our ready-made garment sector is well in line with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goal 12, which aims at ensuring responsible consumption and production. The biggest concern of this sector is in the production of textiles, which is resource intensive due to the processes of washing, dyeing, and finishing. A number of national and international projects and initiatives are simultaneously being taken. And this is also where your question regarding buyers' involvement. Yes, with the help of the buyers and assistance of some of the buyers, these projects are being taken to address and the growing sustainability challenges. I will just mention a few. Through the implementation of the PACT project, which is Partnership for Cleaner Textiles, more than 338 factories have reduced fresh water consumption by 25 million meter cube per year and cut wastewater discharge by 21.08 million meter cube per year. These factories now save 2.5 million MWH per year in energy and avoid greenhouse gas emissions of up to 489,796 tons per year of CO2, the equivalent of removing over 98,000 cars from the roads. Recently, WARPO has drafted industrial water usage policy for government of Bangladesh, and our association has strongly associated with technical insights in this initiative. A national chemical management guideline is also being developed for further industrial chemical management through a joint collaboration between our association, the University of Engineering, and GIZ, which is a development partner. We have pledged with the German government the Green Button Initiative. It is the first ever state-owned global seal on environmental sustainability. It looks into all aspects of sustainability of apparel products. To sustain the safety of the ready-made garment industry, council comprising of buyers, comprising of the factory owners, comprising of the workers' representatives, and comprising of the government has been formed in Bangladesh for the first time to address these issues. As per BGMES, which is our associations, we are the first one in Bangladesh to produce a sustainability report in the year 2020, where we have exported 84.7 million US dollar worth of textile waste as part of the circularity. Currently, we are domestically recycling less than 5% of the textile waste. However, as we are adding more values, Bangladesh can actually enhance by its export earning by exporting this waste to other countries. As per the report of a pathway to manage private sector impact on Bangladesh, National Priority Indicators and Sustainable Development Goals, which is a joint initiative again of our association, UNDP, GRI, and the Prime Minister's Office of Bangladesh, the SDGs office. 47 factories of our association have self-reported their impacts on SDG 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 12, and 13. 42% of factories set goals to reduce energy, waste, and resource consumption in the next 3 years that range from 2% to 15%, whereas their GHG emissions and water consumption reduction goals for the next 5 years range from 5% to 25%. 32% of the factories are already implementing either a reuse or recycle policy for the waste practice. Furthermore, in the past 3 years, they have reduced 34% plastic consumption by an average of 30%. 98% of factories have environmental grievance mechanism systems put in place, and out of those, 6% received complaints due to the incorrect disposal of solid waste. So monitoring is also being done very strongly by the association. A number of initiatives have also been taken and implemented for the development of decent work and economic growth, SDG 8, in our sector. For the social sustainability, we have raised the minimum wage several times over the past decade. Total number of registered trade unions have increased from 872 till the year 2019. We have formed a bilateral committee with registered trade union federation to solve labor issues. We have addressed 12 health centers providing healthcare facilities, medicines to more than 60,000 garment workers free of cost. Other initiatives such as anti-sexual harassment committee, group insurance, support to lactating mothers working in garment factories have also been taken. The government of Bangladesh, along with our association, has taken an initiative of establishing 100 economic zones all over the country. We actually plan to have very much efforts, these issues of sustainability in mind when we are planning to set up these units. And the key to success in our country has been the proactiveness of the business association, along with the efforts of some of the key buyers. I must recognize H&M, which is also one of the buyers who's present in this panel. H&M has been leading from the front the issues of circularity and sustainability in its supply chain. So you see, when we all work together like that, and when you have the government and the association, everybody, this is indeed possible to make the necessary changes in areas of environmental and social sustainability, achieving productive enterprises,
Thank you, Mr. Asif. Time to close. Oh, just in time. Fantastic discussion here in this session. We have the colleagues from the cement working group, the session back with us. So I'm going to close this session now and give Eric back the facilitation. But just to say that we are keeping your questions in the chat and the comments. Laurel is looking and documenting these questions and comments, and will be part of our summary. And in the next session, Samantha, Dr. Sharp, she has been capturing the key messages from this session so that we can share as well at the next one. Clearly, we needed 1 more hour perhaps for the discussion, perhaps even a whole day to continue the very interesting points that have been raised here. But let me close now, and I give it back to Eric. Thank you so much to all the panelists and participants. Really, you are inspiring leaders on your own organizations and companies, and we are very, very honored to have you with us today. Eric, over to you.
Thank you so much, Christina. Yes, all this technology, I still wish we could go back to the old normal where we are all meeting together, perhaps in India or Vietnam, to have this meeting so we can all meet on the sidelines so we can continue our networking. But this is the way it is, and I think everyone has done an excellent job today. The cement session was excellent, and I'm sorry that I missed the textile session. But we will hear now. This is the key messages session. So as Christina has just said, that Samantha will give the key messages for session 3, and then when she is completed, her key messages, and we will move to Claude, who will give the key messages from the cement sector for session 4. So let me pass the mic over to Samantha. Okay, Samantha, please.
Thank you. And I just put together some notes in a PowerPoint. So I'll just quickly click to that, and so it's easy to follow. So our session really focused around 3 questions. So what were the opportunities to sustainably reduce emissions, and also what were the business models? So the discussion kind of put those 2 questions together. So we discussed about, obviously, barriers around, you need to clearly link energy efficiency or emissions reduction activity. So whether that's through energy efficiency or through access to renewable energy, or even in emerging opportunities around circularity, it needs to be clearly linked to the strategic business outcomes. And it's also really important to have demonstration programs and projects that help introduce businesses to these new innovations and allow them to implement them and start to scale them. The second question was, the third question actually, was really around how does the sector combine environmental and social sustainability? So achieving productive enterprises, decent work and just transition. And here we were really talking about how integration is critical. So you can't look at environmental sustainability as being separate from social sustainability. They're clearly linked. There's lots of examples of how they are interlinked. Brad from Cambodia gave the great example of enhancing energy efficiency in garment factories. It reduces business costs. It obviously reduces emissions, and it also enhances working conditions because it enables buildings to be better cooled and so reduces the incidence of heat stress. We also talked about the importance of collaboration and building alliances, and so this was both within the sector, within Asia, but also beyond. So Anya talked about the role of the Fashion Charter and that wider public advocacy role for advocating for renewable energy, and how that obviously involved discussions with the energy sector and government and civil society more broadly, and how that's really important to be able to access some emissions reduction activities around renewable energy. We also talked about the value of setting targets and working together. So setting targets provides clear direction and momentum. I guess the importance of those targets coming from the top as well, and so being supported throughout the entire organisation, and learning from each other. So that's both across the sector and also from outside of the sector, specifically where there's opportunities to access specialist technical knowledge. And so many of the speakers talked about accessing technical knowledge from universities or other UN agencies, and how that was important in terms of identifying relevant innovations and implementing them. So I think that was pretty well it for our discussion. Please, if any of the other panelists or Christina wants to add anything further, let me know. But back to you, Eric. Thank you.
Thank you, Samantha. Okay, let's move on to Claude, please.
Thank you, Eric. Can you hear me well?
Still can hear you very well.
Excellent, excellent. So I've not prepared the slide. I was moderating, so I've not been able to do a slide at the same time. But yes, I think the session for cement was unique in its kind, and it is the first time I saw such a session, because we had on the panel both people who are actually already providing carbon capture and use technologies, and then people from the cement industry. So that was a great exchange. We heard about the three technologies. I think the key conclusion is that there is a huge potential for carbon capture and use in cement and the concrete value chain, that this is a unique solution for use of CO2, because concrete actually offers the option, and construction material actually offer the option of storing the CO2 permanently, which is different to other carbon use technologies. I also think that one of the panelists highlighted that this collaboration and this roundtable is actually a huge opportunity to make carbon capture and use known, and also those properties of concrete, because there are still many people who are not aware of these solutions and the benefit of such a solution. So it's really getting traction on the topic is essential also to help this to develop. It was also highlighted that we should try to make sure there is a market for carbon capture and use activities, so that could there be a way to generate credits or offsets from the use of CO2, but at least that value is provided for the solution.
Clearly, carbon capture and use we can't afford as a sector not to look into it. We're also working on all other levers to reduce CO2 emissions, but like energy efficiency or substitution, material efficiency, fuel switch, but carbon capture technology per se, but use has also an important role to play. I think there is a clear appetite as well from the sector and the businesses to jump the initiative to support this project, both in terms of capacity building, exchanging, and then also practical demonstration of some of the technologies. And yes, I would like to finish on this. What was really highlighted as well by all, like in the other session, is really the key role of partnerships and collaboration. And I think we won't achieve this alone. We really need this collaboration. And I would really like to thank ESCAP for having put this together and having allowed us to just have this 1 hour panel with CCU technologies and the cement industry and the whole event. I know it's not finished, but big thank you and kudos.
Thank you, Claude. Okay, let's quickly move on to session 6. This is the panel of driving sustainability in the garment and cement sectors, and this will be moderated by Mr. Mark Broch. He's my chief of the Investment and Enterprise Development, Trading, Investment, Innovation Division of ESCAP. Mark, you can take it over.
Yes, I'm here. Thank you, Eric. I presume everybody can hear me. I think that we had two very great breakout sessions. I scuttled around both of them, both cement and the textiles. And now we have one concluding panel. And we have 3 people on that panel. We have one representative from the Cement Manufacturers Association of India, was not confirmed, but I believe Mr. Mahendra Singhi, who is the CEO of Dalmia Cement, who had spoken earlier, also represents the CMA of India. If he wants to speak in this panel, he's welcome. But for now, let me give the floor first to Mr. Surachai. Phangrattanachai must be from Thailand, right?
Yeah.
Who is the Research and Innovation Director of SCG Cement. Is that CM Cement or?
Yes, CM Cement, yes.
Yes, I'm Cement, so it's very good. And you present together with Mr. Manasit Sarigapur?
I present alone.
You will be alone. Okay, so Mr. Surachai, the floor is yours. And the purpose of this concluding session is really how are we going to take this forward and how can we drive sustainability in the cement and the textiles and garments industries. So, Mr. Surachai, floor is yours.
I have to share my screen. How can I do that? Wait a minute. Kun Kanda, could you?
Yes, I can help you, Kun
Surachai. I cannot know how to share my screen, so I need your help. Okay, thank you. So I would like to explain our. Could you make the full screen, please? Okay, come back to the first slide. Thank you. This our mission of the SCG that we need to express our ambition to go to net zero emission in 2050. Next slide, please. Just give some introduction for people in another industry or another country. For SCG Cement, we change the name now to the Cement and Construction Solution. We are mainly in Thailand since maybe more than 100 years ago, and we expand our business to Myanmar, Vietnam, Cambodia, and Indonesia. Our total capacity allows 34 million tons per year of cement. In Thailand, we have the cement production, as I mentioned earlier, allow 23 million tons. We also have the white cement plant, 0.2 million tons, and we have the mortar plant, and the ready-mix concrete is more than 300 plants allow Thailand. This is the introduction of our company. So move to the next slide, please. This one is the roadmap that our management have the commitment to the UNFCCC and about the Paris Agreement. What we have to do, the first thing that you can see in the red graph, this is our current situation in Thailand. You can see that in 2020, our emission is very high comparing to the average of the industry. It's a little bit higher, and comparing with the leader, very high. We have the plan to reduce the CO2 emission. You can see that the graph is go lower. In 2030, we plan to achieve the allow to 430, something like that. If we can follow this graph, we plan to have the net zero in 2050 at the plan. This is our commitment. And the next one, move to the next slide, please. You see the conclusion of what we are doing in the next 9 years. In the next 9 years, the first one that we have to do with the scope 1 and scope 2. The first thing that we have the low carbon product. What we try to do in Thailand, mainly the ordinary Portland cement that consume a lot of clinker. We try to change the market. Do it alone. We do it with our friends. For example, Siam City Cement, TPI. We go together, try to educate our customer, educate some governments that if we use the same thing as in the future, as in the past, we cannot achieve the CO2 emission in the near future. So we educate the market, educate everyone with in the name of the Thai Cement Manufacturing Association, not in our company alone. This is our work in the low carbon product. The next thing that we try to use the supplementary cementitious material. In the industry, clinker generate a lot of CO2. So we have to use some supplementary material, especially in the local in Thailand. In Thailand, they have something special comparing with as you may know that in the world, normally we use the fly ash and blast furnace slag. In Thailand, maybe some situation may be different. So we can use some kind of the agricultural ashes can be used in the cement and concrete. This is the first thing that we have to do. And the second thing that the second policy is about the zero coal. We try to don't use the coal in the clinker production. How can we do that? The first thing that we use a biomass. Biomass is something from the agricultural. As you may know that in Thailand, they have a lot of agricultural industry or many farming areas. We cannot use it without some technology from the burner. We have to learn how to do it and have the good burning system to go to the zero coal policy. The next one, we call it the net zero power. It means that we not use the power from the coal generation anymore. We have the many initiatives of in this area. As you may know, I would like to mention especially for the solar power. The solar power nowadays, the price very cheap. In some cases, they're lower than the coal plant power. In some cases, we have to use the solar with the energy storage. Because the solar, you cannot use the solar all day. Solar is from the morning until the evening. You need some storage that to make it 24 hours. Because the cement operation normally run 24 hours a day. This is the thing that we have the commitment to use zero power. Even if we try to do all the things, the three things, we cannot achieve the target. We have to another technology that maybe mentioned earlier in the section number 4. We have to utilize the CCU and carbon capture and utilization. We study a lot of things to use this one, but very in the early beginning, we have many things to do about that. Also, we call the carbon offset. It means that the carbon offset, we use we call the natural climate ambition to use the CO2 in a plantation, in the sea, in the something like that. This is our doing. And we also thinking about the concrete decarbonation. It means the CO2, normally we produce the CO2, and CO2 can be used in the concrete to increase the property of the concrete. That's the thing that we do in the scope 1 and 2. And for the scope number 3, we try to use the electrical car. We have to do because we think that in the future we can change almost all the car in the cement plant into the electrical car. This is all the thing that I would like to show. And if you have any questions or any comment, please let me know. This is all of my presentation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Surachai, for this presentation. I now give the floor to Mr. Peter Ford. He is the H&M Group Environment Program Specialist in Cambodia, Vietnam, and also Myanmar, I believe, right? And the chair of the Fashion Charter Policy Engagement Working Group. Mr. Peter Ford, the floor is yours.
Hi, everyone. 1 second, I'll just share my screen. Hopefully, it's been a long day for everyone, but hopefully be a nice ending for you all. Yes, the UNFCCC Fashion Charter, I hope you're all aware. I know Anya mentioned it earlier, but it plays a central role here in obviously climate action and CO2 reduction, but also in bringing people together to work together on this topic, sharing ideas and knowledge, and finding a common purpose, all behind this stated aim of 30% reduction in greenhouse gas by 2030 and net zero by 2050, which is increasingly in line now with the global commitments of many brands, companies, and even countries. It also includes a much more industry-specific target of no new coal boilers in on-site production by 2025, which is a much closer target that we're all working around and with. And I work with the policy engagement side of UNFCCC's Fashion Charter. As you can see, it fills in, it's one of 7, I should say, different working groups that we have, all of which work to achieve those stated targets on greenhouse gas reduction, material improvements, and all these other areas of work that are all needed to have working together in order to achieve any success. So yeah, policy engagement is just one part of how we will achieve all of these environmental targets. And just to put a little bit in perspective for you here, so it's at least 107 brands and retailers from the fashion sector have agreed to these carbon reduction targets, which follow the science-based target principle. Not everyone yet, but we're working on it to getting even more of our colleagues and partners to make these commitments. And also then aligning with other sectors, the NGO world, the development space, to also make sure that what we're all doing is working in the same direction. And this is all because the garment sector contributes somewhere between 4 and 8% of all global CO2 emissions. So we're well aware of our impact on the globe, and also therefore the need to improve upon this and find a solution. So working around the policy sector, that then involves finding country-specific and even industry, micro-industry specific, whether it's shoes or bags or clothing, what policy developments are needed in each market or within each region that will help us meet these goals and targets. And yeah, it's a great collaborative effort with a lot of stakeholders. working together, including many of you, I think, in this room. So that's the very short summary of what we're doing, why we're doing it, and how it's important for everyone to do it together. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter, for that. Then finally, I give the floor to Mr. Vincent Aloysius. He's the senior advisor to Holcim INSEE EcoCycle company. Maybe Vincent, if you are there, you may explain how that works. As far as I know, Holcim is a Swiss company, and INSEE is an initiative of Syme Cement, right?
Yes, yes.
Unless I get that wrong. So perhaps you can explain what this is about.
Hello, everyone. I think there's a bit of a minor mistake there. I used to be with Holcim, but now I'm, an advisor in EcoCycle, which is a part of the Siam City Cement Group. But actually, in the past, Holcim did have a ownership stake in Siam City Cement. But anyhow, that's a little bit about me. So I've spent a big part of my career in the cement industry. And, when we speak about sustainability and what is driving, the cement industry towards sustainability, this goes back, a couple of decades, actually, and quite a number of years, because, the forerunner to what we now all speak about, circular economy, the buzzword back then, in the 80s was industrial ecology. And, the cement industry was pretty much in a spotlight. And why was it in a spotlight? Because it used to be, and it still is, a highly energy intensive industry, and it's an extractive industry. So, naturally it had to overcome a lot of perception issues, but also it was in a very good sweet spot because the process of manufacturing clinker and cement is a ultra high thermal process, and this allows some special opportunities, and the previous speaker on the panel had already mentioned particularly the use of waste or alternative fuels in the cement making process. And this was one of the things that Holcim in the past, and also it has caught on in the industry, that it's something that can really contribute very much towards circularity. So, but what's in it for industry? That would be the usual question, right? So for the cement industry and for other sectors, sustainability has to mean good business, profitable business, and that could come from cost competitiveness, or it could come in the form of new revenue platforms. And particularly in the waste management area, that new revenue platform has been something that has caught on quite a bit, but there's a huge disparity between what's the situation in developing countries compared to more developed economies. For example, if you looked at if you have the target of zero fossil fuel in the cement manufacturing process, in Europe, the replacement of fossil fuels with industrial waste in an industrial average would be 50, 80, and sometimes close to 100%. Meanwhile, in Asia, it's in the low 20s or even below that. And why is that so? That's because while there's a sweet spot and good opportunities for this new kind of revenue platforms that are the basis of a sustainable business, there are also a lot of barriers alongside the opportunities. Things like the policies that are in place, enforcement of regulations, all these also create a situation where there are a lot of barriers for us to achieve. So in my short message here, what I would like to add is, you know, a lot of our speakers have talked about collaboration. The whole ecosystem is a very busy space, and you cannot do it alone. And I want to illustrate this with a few slides, and perhaps I could ask Kanda to please share my slide. I have a little flow chart here that I would like to share. So if you look here, I'm trying to, it's my attempt at trying to illustrate the not so circular economy that we live in today. So if we look at, what we desire to be, it really means we need to reduce or eliminate waste at every part of the economic cycle or circle. But the current situation where we see that there are a lot of leakages, and these leakages are, inefficiencies, inefficiencies in energy and use of raw material, and inefficiencies in also managing waste. So actually the cement sector, particularly for developing economies, can provide, the right kind of infrastructure for waste management, at the same time harnessing energy and mineral content from waste in an efficient way without purpose-built infrastructure with huge investments. So my message would be, from looking at this, there are two aspects to it. One, it's about the cement industry itself doing what it can because of its unique processes that enables it to recover energy and raw materials from waste. But I think, the other important part is we cannot forget extended producer responsibility. And this should be the foundation for a lot of collaboration to happen, from big brands, be it garment or be it FMCG, other FMCG products and packaging and things like that. If there was a much more responsibility and leadership leading to extended producer responsibility, there'll be more space for generating business opportunities through collaboration. That would be my message on how to drive or what is driving sustainability, particularly for the cement industry. And perhaps I want to also take the opportunity to talk about one specific issue that is very current today. And Kanda, can you please go to the next slide? And here I wanted to show you something about what can be done towards marine plastic pollution, and particularly coming from non-recyclable plastics that ends up in dump sites and landfills. What you see in the picture here is an effort to do landfill mining, digging up plastics from landfills that are very often located quite close to canals, rivers, and other water bodies that eventually end up as marine plastic pollution. And it's well-known fact that about 80% of marine plastic, the plastics that end up in our marine environment, actually originate inland. So if we can plug the plastic leakage inland, then we are doing something about marine plastic pollution. And this is where the cement industry can play a very special role as well, because the capacity to absorb the energy that's in this non-recyclable plastics in the cement industry is huge, and it can be an answer to particularly the Southeast Asian region. I think I'll stop there and maybe take a few questions as we go later. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vincent. I look at the chat to see if there's any questions. I also want to ask if Mr. Mahendra Singhi, are you still around? Do you want to make any comment under this session in capacity as a representative of the Cement Manufacturers Association of India? Are you still there? No? If not, then the floor is open. Anybody wants to ask any questions? No questions? People are getting tired, I suppose?
Actually, Mark, this is Christina. There was some questions in the chat. If we still have time and people wants to take the floor, they can do it now, right?
Yes, I'm scrolling back up to see what is there.
I know there was a question for Mr. Asif, for example.
That was under a previous session, I believe. But I mean, I think
yes,
that he's still here and there's still time. If others are still here, they can also answer that question. There was a question for
I'll answer it, Mark. I'll answer it. The question was from David Williams, and he said, in your view and experience, what is the single most impactful and realistic / viable green investment factories can and should make in Bangladesh, and what will it take to enable industry-wide adoption? I think right now I mentioned during my deliberation about the special economic zones that the government is coming up with, and in those special economic zones already plans are put in place to ensure that a lot of environmental factors are taken into consideration, cluster-based approach, waste disposal, and all those issues. So my advice would be to come and invest in and set up a factory in those special economic zones, and investment can be made in the backward linkage. Particularly, Bangladesh is actually quite weak in man-made fiber, which is where the global trend is now going. So I would encourage anyone to come in and invest in the man-made fiber backward linkage for the textile industry. And if it can be green and circular, it would be absolutely